Gracias, muchas gracias. Buenas tardes. Muy buenas tardes. Gracias, Guillermo, por... No sé de qué estás hablando, pero sonó muy bien. Hay una tradición en la comunidad dominicana de señalar la presencia de distinguidos miembros y toma tanto tiempo que aunque es muy, una tradición muy buena, quiero solamente decir que me identifico con todas las palabras que han dicho anteriormente. So thank you. Consider it a given that I am honoring all of you who should be honored. And let's keep on to my comments. Guillermo, you were a pioneer in the Dominican community, and I thank you for your service on the board of directors of the National Council of La Raza for so many years. You didn't mention your own accomplishments very much, but you also, there was a group of folks who got together every year who represented the leadership of our country, the Latino leadership, including all the people that you can think of, cabinet members, congressmen, and other elected officials, as well as people from other disciplines. And one of those people who participated every year was Guillermo Linares and provided leadership to the entire country. You should know that my first choice when I was offered an ambassadorship was the Dominican Republic. They also asked me what my second choice was, and I said Dominican Republic. And quiero decirles con toda humildad que ya me ha sido completamente aplatanado. Words like un chin have become part of my vocabulary. But speaking here to this audience of proud Americans who maintain strong ties to their land of origin, I want to begin by saying something about the character of the United States, the thing that I believe makes us a nation unique. It's often said that almost all Americans have immigrant roots, but this is true of other countries as well. What I believe makes America unique is that throughout our history, Americans have maintained these roots to their nations of origin. It is these immigrant communities, diasporas, that have helped make our nation what it is today. This is true of the Dominican American community in the United States, a community whose impact on the United States is felt more proudly each year. Han enriquecido nuestra sociedad. For most Americans, the most visible Dominicans are on the playing field. 26 Dominicans were among the 8 major league players that made it to the playoff this year. And even if David Ortiz and the Red Sox didn't make it, Robinson Cano and Alberto Pujols are leading the Yankees and the Cardinals into the postseason. But the Dominicans in the United States, the Dominican diaspora, are making the mark off the field as well. Dominicans like Tomas Perez, whose grandparents came to the United States in the wake of Trujillo's totalitarian regime, and who now serves as Assistant Attorney General for the Civil Rights Division of the United States Department of Justice, Judge Orlando Acosta, who came from Santiago de los Caballeros, and is now a Justice of the Supreme Court of New York County, Camelia Valdez, who is the lead prosecutor in Passaic County, Juan Picharro, who is a state senator in Rhode Island. Indeed, today there are 24 mayors, local officials, and state legislators of Dominican descent in the states of Maryland, Massachusetts, New Jersey, and New York, Pennsylvania, and Rhode Island. And if I missed one state, please forgive me. Their professional priorities, in part, are the offshoot of the diaspora experience. The Dominican diaspora has also been active in the financial world and in philanthropy. For example, the group of Dominicans on Wall Street champions educational initiatives that inspire students to pursue careers in the financial markets. And the Dominican diaspora has blazed new trails in literature. Names like Junot Diaz, Julia Alvarez, Nelly Rosario, Roberto James Rawlings, and Angie Cruz are at the forefront of today's literature. Finally, I would be remiss in not noting the appointment of my colleague, Ulisa Reynoso from New York, as Deputy Assistant Secretary for Central America and the Caribbean Affairs of the United States Department of State. originally from Salcedo and a self-described Dominican Bronx roots, Deputy Secretary Reynoso now promotes U.S. interests in Latin America. Forgive me, I have Parkinson's, so I'm a little shaky. It's not that I don't understand what I'm saying. It's just that my disease keeps me shaking all the time. But it's no big deal. I just have to watch out that I don't spill too much beer. All of these Dominicans draw on the proud history of those who fought for freedom and democracy in the Dominican Republic. Men like Juan Pablo Duarte, who dreamed of creating a free and democratic Dominican Republic, like Gregorio Luperón, who fought against Spain for the continued independence of the Dominican Republic, and not just men, women too, like the Mirabal sisters, whose courage and bravery in the face of one of the history's most repressive regimes continues to inspire us today. Our two nations' histories have often intersected. Every morning when I walk to my office, I pass the photos of my predecessors, including Frederick Douglass, a man who was born a slave but became one of the United States' greatest advocates against slavery and later represented the United States as the head of the American legation in Santo Domingo. Even the geography of our states paid tribute to the close ties between our two nations. Just as there is a high school in New York named Gregorio Luperón in Santo Domingo, I can drive down Avenida George Washington and make a ride onto Avenida Abraham Lincoln and continue to the intersection with Avenida John F. Kennedy. Of course, our joint history is not without controversy. As I drove up Lincoln, I would pass Avenida Charles Sumner, another American, a senator from the 19th century, who is far from a household name in the United States today. But in the Dominican Republic, he is remembered for having blocked the U.S. Senate ratification of a treaty that would have annexed the Republic to the United States. Similarly, the two U.S. interventions in the Dominican Republic during the 20th century still can stir passionate debate. The Dominican Republic has come a long way in the past 5 years since the end of the dictatorships, but important challenges remain. Many of you are familiar with these challenges. Healthcare persists, often contaminated school lunches, the spread of AIDS, the recent return of cholera to the island of Hispaniola. Poll after poll shows that Dominicans believe crime is increasing, a belief no doubt encouraged by trafficking in narcotics. Unemployment and underemployment are serious problems. But we are working with our partners in the Dominican government and society to confront these problems. But in my opinion, that none of our efforts will be able to succeed unless we tackle the country's most serious problem. And that problem is the continuing low quality of education. Out of 17 countries in the Hispanic world, the Dominican Republic ranks 17th. Out of 147 nations of the world, the Dominican Republic ranks 146 in terms of educational outcomes. One study from Harvard University found that the top 10% of students in the Dominican Republic ranked at the same level in test scores and achievements as the bottom 10% of students in countries such as South Korea and Canada. These data are even more worrying given that 40% of the Dominican population is under 15 years old. So that means that the youth are not getting the education that's necessary to compete in the 21st century economic world. And this matters. Economists will tell you that there is a direct relationship between a country having a well-educated population and enjoying sustained economic growth. But even if you're not an economist, you know that in today's global economy, you need a good education to compete and be successful. You know that education is key to developing an equitable society that provides opportunities for all its citizens. Dominicans understand this, and it is Dominicans who have played the leading role in improving educational systems, its own. The private sector is already working on this cause. Civil society organizations have highlighted this issue and have initiated a wide debate. In the United States, through the Office of AID, has provided millions of dollars in assistance to the support the Ministry of Education and its 10-year program to improve the quality and development of basic education. And we hope to be an active part of many reform efforts that are taking place in the Dominican Republic, including the goal of complying with the constitutional requirement that 4% of GDP be spent on education. Thank you. But I say to you today that it's time for the Dominican diaspora to increase its involvement. I know that many of you have stepped in where others are willing or unable to do so. I know that others are looking for ways to help. In the coming weeks and months, I hope to be with many of you and talk about how you can be part of the effort to help the Dominican Republic where it needs the help the most. When I first arrived at the embassy almost a year ago, I asked to see the mission statement. I was surprised to see that there not to exist a satisfactory document that met our needs. So I called for a retreat of the embassy staff in which we looked at State Department mandates, President Obama's speeches, and Secretary Clinton's policies. At the end of the day, a long day, we agreed on the following statement of our mission statement, and I quote, promover los intereses y valores de los Estados Unidos, trabajando juntos con los dominicanos para lograr un desarrollo continuo de la República Dominicana, un desarrollo democrático, equitativo y próspero. To say that in English, our mission is to promote the interests and values of the United States by working together with Dominicans for the continued development of a democratic, equitable, and prosperous Dominican Republic. Now, please understand what this means. This means that the essence of our statement is that American security and prosperity are dependent on the existence of neighbors who are democratic, just, and prosperous. I believe that doing the right thing for the right reasons is the only way to ensure stability. We do well by doing well for others and to others. Or as the much admired 19th century president of Mexico, Benito Juárez, once said, el respeto al derecho ajeno es la paz. More than 60 million Americans are first or second generation members of the diaspora community. There are more than 1 million people of Dominican origin living in the United States. So you say 2 million, and I don't disagree. To achieve what we need to achieve in the Dominican Republic, we need to expand and deepen the connection between the Dominican diaspora community and the Dominican Republic. You, the Dominican diaspora, have the potential to be the most powerful asset the United States has in achieving our goals in the Dominican Republic. Because of your familiarity with the nation, your own motivations, your own special skills and leadership, you can be, as Secretary Clinton has said, our Peace Corps, our USAID, our State Department, all rolled into one. President Barack Obama has called for a new era of partnership between the countries of Latin America and the United States, saying the region's economic growth and increased democracy means it must assume a greater role in the world. The diaspora community needs to be a big part of that partnership. Let me share with you the President's own words. In the Americas today, there are no senior partners. There are no junior partners. There are only equal partners. Of course, equal partnership in turn demands a sense of shared responsibility. We have obligations to each other. Hermanos y hermanas, no podría concluir sino dejarles un mensaje como un activista en derechos civiles. My friends, it would be inappropriate for me to leave this podium without sharing some thoughts on our rights as Latinos, as Americans. Martin Luther King once said that a person should be judged by the content of their character, not by the color of his skin. I say to you that a person should be judged by his actions, and not by his or her accent. Muchas gracias.